My name is Samuel Carver. I'm 42 years old, and I have one of the most important jobs in the world. No, I'm not a president or a scientist trying to cure cancer. I am something else entirely. I'm a cross between a doctor, a historian, and a soldier. I, my friends, am a monster hunter. It's not a job you find on the internet or in a help wanted ad. You don't go to school for it. There's no uniform or official badge. But make no mistake, this work is real and dangerous, and most people will never even know it exists. I grew up in Orange County, California. Surfboards, palm trees, traffic, strip malls. I had a normal life for a while. I rode my bike to school, hung out with my friends, and spent hot weekends at the beach. My mom was a nurse. My dad ran a small hardware store. We weren't rich, but we got by. I always liked books more than sports, especially the ones about things that go bump in the night. When I was a kid, I used to borrow those old, dusty books from the library, the ones nobody touched anymore. Folk stories, ghost sightings, weird disappearances. I didn't know it at the time, but I was already training for this job. I didn't believe everything I read, but I believed some of it. I could feel it in my bones, There were things out there people weren't talking about. I left for college when I turned 18. Got into a decent school in the city. Studied history first, then medicine. I was good at both. I thought maybe I'd become a teacher, or maybe work in a hospital. But then, something happened. Something I don't talk about often. It involved a small town not far from here, and a family of vampires living in plain sight. That was the turning point. That's when I learned monsters were real. Not in a fairy tale kind of way either. I mean real, physical, dangerous, living beside us without us even noticing. How I got through that is a story for another time, but it pulled me into this life. I didn't choose it, not really. It chose me, and I've been doing it ever since. The thing is, being a monster hunter isn't what you think it is. It's not wild fights and dramatic music. It's not racing around with crosses and stakes. Most of the time, it's paperwork, research, planning, surveillance, learning every detail about a creature before making a move. If you just run in guns blazing, you'll probably end up dead and fast. I have survived 20 years by being very careful, by learning, by remembering. And lately, I've been haunted by things I can't forget. So I started writing this journal. Stories from the job. People I don't want to forget. Creatures I wish I could. Rules I've picked up along the way. If you're reading this, maybe it'll help you too. This journal will serve as a documentation of my life, my work, my failures, my lessons, and the monsters I've faced. When I finally hang it up, when I retire from the field for good, I'll leave it with the Institute. Somewhere deep in the archives, it'll sit, maybe gathering dust. Or maybe someone like me will find it and learn something that saves their life. My name is Samuel Carver, and I hunt what goes bump in the night. These are my stories. One of my earliest missions wasn't one that was assigned me. I chanced upon it by accident. I was maybe 5 years into the job at that time. Still green by some standards, but I knew how to keep myself alive, and I wasn't afraid of walking into dark places. I was deep in the Appalachian Mountains, tracking something whose name I couldn't pronounce. Some old spirit with roots in Cherokee myth. Something that moved between trees faster than any animal should. I never ended up finding it, by the way. Got sidetracked. That happens more often than you would think. It was customary back then, and still is, for hunters to check in with ranger stations or fire lookouts when passing through national parks, not just for safety, but because most of the rangers are in on the joke, so to speak. They know what we are. They know what we do. Most of them don't ask too many questions, and in return we keep them informed if something strange is happening in their territory. I have a lot of respect for those guys. People think they just hand out trail maps and deal with lost hikers. They do a hell of a lot more. They are the first line of defense when it comes to monsters. Whether the public knows it or not, a lot of these rangers have seen things they will never speak about. Things they don't want to believe were real. The station I stopped at was small, more of a wooden lodge tucked between trees than anything official looking. It had a wraparound porch, a stone chimney, and 2 flags out front, one for the state, one for the Forest Service. When I walked up, I expected a short chat, maybe a few handshakes, then I'd be on my way. But the second I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. Inside, the air was still, heavy, like people had been holding their breath. There were a few rangers inside, standing near the main desk. They looked tense, alert, but what drew my eye first wasn't them. It was the couple in the middle of the room. A man and a woman sitting on the floor near a pile of folded blankets. The woman was sobbing, not crying, sobbing. Her face was buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking hard enough that she couldn't keep still. The man had one arm around her, trying to hold her together, but I could tell he was struggling himself. His face was pale, his jaw locked so tight it looked painful. He wasn't crying, but he was not okay. One of the rangers spotted me. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with gray sideburns and tired eyes. We'd met once before on another case, something involving a cave system and lights that moved on their own. He walked over quickly and pulled me aside, out of earshot from the family.
Carver, yeah, didn't expect to see you here.
Just passing through. What's going on? I replied. He glanced back at the couple, then leaned in.
Their boy's gone. Jameson, 9 years old. Disappeared off the trail near Rattlesnake Ridge about 2 hours ago.
I waited. That wasn't enough to bring me in. He sighed, rubbed the back of his neck, and said,
The father saw something take him. A creature, 9 feet tall, gray skin, rough like bark, big arms, bigger hands. He swears it looked like a troll.
I didn't answer right away, because trolls, they're not common around here. Scandinavia, sure, the old countries, but the Appalachian range, you don't see trolls unless something is very out of place. Was he sure? I asked. The ranger nodded once.
Said he was 100 feet away. Saw the whole thing. Said he grabbed the kid and walked into the woods like he weighed nothing. Father tried his best to run after it, track it, even shoot at it. But it was too fast and he lost it.
And nobody else saw the thing? I asked.
Well, no one else was close enough, but they found broken trees, uprooted stumps, big footprints, he said.
How big? He pointed to a nearby floor tile.
About that wide. I did the math in my head.
That was not human. Not even close. Where's the rest of your team? I asked. He shook his head.
Already searching. We got men in the woods, but it's too dense. And if this thing doesn't want to be found, well, you know how that goes."
I did. I looked over at the parents again. The mother was still shaking. The father had both arms around her now, trying to keep her from falling apart completely. There was a backpack beside them, a kid's pack, blue, with a worn Spider-Man patch sewn onto the front. And that's when I made the decision. I didn't need an assignment. I didn't need clearance. I just nodded to the ranger. "Show me the trail," I said. And that's how it started. The ranger led me out of the back of the lodge and toward a narrow dirt path that disappeared into the trees. We walked in silence at first, our boots crunching over dead leaves and gravel. The sun was still up, but it was fading fast. In the woods, that meant the dark would settle in soon, quicker than you'd expect. We call this one the Ridge Trail. Loops around the western edge, maybe 4 miles long. The family set up their camp off a clearing halfway through, the ranger said. "Any idea how far the creature got?" I asked. He shook his head. Nah, the trail cameras, they're useless. Whatever took the boy moved low and moved fast, like it knew when not to be seen. Our guys found tracks, but they just stopped after a while, like it walked right into the ground. That sounded about right. Now, trolls aren't smart in the usual sense, but they know how to stay hidden. They know how to survive. The camp was quiet when we got there. A single tent stood in the clearing, the kind you get at any outdoor store. Blue, simple, zip up front. There was a fold-out chair and a half-cooked meal still on a camping stove. No one's touched it since. The ranger gestured toward a broken patch of dirt near the tree line. That's where the dad saw it. Said Jameson was picking flowers. Turned around to put him in a jar. When he looked back, the boy was gone. And something huge was stomping into those woods. I crouched beside the patch. The footprints were deep, wider than my own boot by a few inches. Whatever it was heavy. I followed them with my eyes, watching how they cut a jagged path through ferns and underbrush. Then I saw something else. Torn cloth. A strip of red fabric caught on a branch, low to the ground. I plucked it gently, turned it over in my hand. It looked like a piece of a kid's jacket. "He's heading north," I said. The ranger nodded grimly. "We'll keep combing the area. You want backup?" "No. If it's a troll, you'd only slow me down." "No offense," I said. "None taken," he replied. I gave him a pat on the shoulder and stepped into the woods. Tracking at night, it's a whole different game. You move slower, listen harder, pay attention to things most people ignore. Crushed mushrooms, bent grass, the sound of a bird stopping its song too early. I followed the trail for about an hour. Wasn't easy. The troll had a strong gait, wide steps, but light on the edges. I found broken branches, scrapped bark, and once, a single smudge of blood on a rock. It was enough to tell me I was close. Then I heard it. A low sound coming from ahead. Not growling, not breathing. Humming. Trolls love to hum. It's not music, really. It's more like a slow rhythm they keep when they're thinking about food, when they're waiting. I moved slower now, one foot in front of the other. The humming grew louder. Then I saw the pit. It was tucked behind a tangle of roots and moss, about 10 feet wide and 6 feet deep, lined with stones and wet leaves. At the bottom, curled up against the mud, was a boy, Jameson. He looked terrified but alive. His hands were tied in front of him with some kind of fibrous vine, the kind that grows high in the trees and hangs like ropes. His face was streaked with dirt, and his eyes were red from crying. But he was breathing. About 10 feet away, the troll sat on a rock. It was huge, 13 feet tall at least, with skin like cracked concrete. Its back was hunched, and its arms hung nearly to the ground. Its nose was fat and bulbous, and its mouth hung open just enough to show teeth like broken gravestones. It didn't see me yet. It was sharpening its claws on a rock, dragging them slowly back and forth, making a dry scraping sound. Every few strokes, it hummed. I checked my belt. No weapons, no traps. I'd packed light, planning for a scouting trip, not a rescue mission. All I had was a pocket knife, a small emergency flare, and a net I'd tucked in my bag last minute, laced with old wolfsbane. That would have to be enough. I stepped carefully behind a tree, got the net ready, and pulled the flare from my jacket. I counted to 3. Then I lit it and threw it hard at a pile of dry brush to the troll's right. With a loud crack, the flare exploded in a shower of light and sound. The troll roared, staggering to its feet, covering its ears. I ran. In 3 steps, I was at the edge of the pit. Jameson, look at me. He blinked up, dazed. I jumped down, cut the vines with my knife, hoisted him onto my shoulder, and climbed out. He held on tight. No words, just clinging, like he thought he might disappear again. The troll was still stumbling, growling, blinded. I threw the net. It hit its shoulders and clung like wet cloth. The wolfsbane worked fast, burned the skin, slowed its movements. It howled, swatted at it, stumbling in circles. We didn't wait around to watch. I carried Jameson back through the woods, step after step, mile after mile, until I saw the first flicker of lantern light through the trees. When we reached the lodge, his mother screamed his name and ran to us. His father followed close behind. They pulled him from my arms and held him like they never planned to let go again. Jameson didn't speak. Not that night. He just kept holding on. I gave the parents a nod. They were crying, thanking me over and over. I didn't say much. I never did in situations like that. I just made sure the kid was safe, gave the ranger a brief rundown, and started packing my things. I filed the report with the Institute the next morning. I told him everything about the troll, the boy, the pit in the woods. I left nothing out. They weren't thrilled. Technically, I'd broken protocol. I wasn't supposed to engage without clearance, and I definitely wasn't supposed to go in without backup. The Institute has rules about these things. And for good reason. Hunters who go off mission tend not to come back. Well, I got sanctioned for it. Slap on the wrist, not suspended, but close. I hated it, but I lived with it. Because the important part wasn't what I did, it was what I found. Trolls don't belong in Appalachia. They just don't. That's not their range. If one showed up here, it meant something had gone wrong somewhere else. The Institute confirmed it a few weeks later. Monsters had been migrating. Not just trolls, other creatures too. Ones that hadn't been seen in decades, centuries, were turning up in places they shouldn't be. Some were crossing borders, others were crossing oceans. The reasons weren't clear. Some scientists blamed rising temperatures, lost habitats, disrupted hunting grounds. Others weren't so sure. They thought it might be something else, something older, something bigger. No one had answers yet, but everyone agreed on one thing. Whatever was happening, it was just the beginning. This next case was maybe 7 years after the troll in the woods. I was in Louisiana at the time, in town for a wedding, a civilian event. An old friend from college tying the knot. I wasn't there on business, not at first. I just wanted to eat good food, hear some live jazz, and have a drink that didn't taste like it came out of a bottle shaped like a novelty. You don't get many breaks in this line of work, and when one comes, you take it. Besides, I like New Orleans. Always have. It's a strange city, and I mean that in the best way. Music everywhere, people dancing in the street, lanterns swaying above narrow balconies. But underneath all that, just below the surface, there is something else. Magic lives there. Real magic. Not the card trick kind. The kind that lingers in alleyways, rides in on the fog, and listens when you speak its name. Voodoo's part of it, sure, but it goes deeper than that. Some places breathe the supernatural. New Orleans doesn't just breathe it, it sings it. I was only supposed to be in town for 4 days. 2 for the wedding, 1 for recovery, and 1 for good luck. But the association sent me a message on day 2. Local case. Urgent. Personal request. Now, I don't usually take jobs while I'm technically off the clock, but when someone requests you by name, you don't ignore it. The message was short. Just a name, a location, and 1 sentence. Kellyanne needs your help. Kellyanne? I'd heard of her. She was a jazz singer, the kind people went quiet for. She sang at the small club near the edge of the French Quarter. Old place, wooden stage, soft lighting, velvet curtains. I'd been there once or twice on past trips. Her voice had a way of stopping time. I showed up at the club after hours. The place was closed, lights dimmed. Someone let me in at the side door. Kellyanne was sitting at the bar, a glass of bourbon in her hand, and a scarf wrapped tight around her neck. She looked tired, not just physically, tired in her bones, like something had been pulled out of her, and she wasn't sure if it was ever coming back. "You're Carver?" she asked, voice thin. I nodded and took the stool beside her. "Yeah, that's right. You asked for me." She gave a weak smile. "They said you handle unusual problems." "That's putting it mildly," I answered. She didn't laugh, just sipped her drink, then pulled the scarf away. Her throat looked fine, but when she spoke again, it was barely audible. "I'm losing my voice, and I don't mean sick. I mean something's taking it." I leaned in a little. Start at the beginning. She told me everything. It had started 2 weeks earlier. After a show, she was approached by a stranger, a man, handsome, soft-spoken, with a voice like smooth smoke. He said he was in music, wanted to help her break out bigger, said he could make things happen. She'd heard that line before, but there was something about him, something easy to trust. They talked for hours. Nothing physical, she said, just words. But afterward, things began to change. Her voice felt weaker. Some notes didn't come out at all. She went to doctors. Nothing wrong. No infection, no strain, just silence. I think he did something to me. I think he took part of me, and I think he's coming back. That was all I needed to hear. Now, sirens don't always live in oceans. Not anymore. They've learned to blend in, to move among people. In the old days, they sat on rocks and sang sailors to their deaths. Now, they walk into clubs, whisper promises, and steal voices one conversation at a time. They're thieves, sirens. But they don't want your money. They want your essence, what makes you special. In Kellyanne's case, it was her voice. You remember anything else? His name? What he looked like? I asked. She hesitated, thinking hard. Tall, dark suit, no tie. His eyes were strange, not in color, just the way he looked at me, like he already owned me. That tracked. I told her to stay at the club, keep the doors locked, and not to speak to anyone she didn't recognize. Then I headed back to my room and dug through my bag. I didn't have much. Like I said, this wasn't supposed to be a working trip. But I had a few basics. My travel kit, some old tokens, a charm or two. And I had the thing I needed most, a small tin vial of salt water, drawn from a place I can't name, and a silver-framed compact mirror I'd carried since my earliest missions. Sirens are weak to salt water. It reminds them of what they used to be, and silver reflects them not as they appear, but as they truly are. I came back to the club just before dawn. Kellyanne was alone, sitting on the stage. Her scarf was off, and she was trying to sing, but nothing came out. Just breath and effort. He arrived minutes later. He didn't knock, just walked in like he owned the place. The moment he stepped inside, the room went cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. Kellyanne froze. Her eyes went wide. I stepped between them. Evening, I said. He looked me over, calm and smooth. You're not her manager. No, but I'm what you call a problem, I replied. The siren smiled. It was a charming smile, meant to disarm, but it didn't touch his eyes. I only take what's freely given, he said. She didn't know what you were, I replied. Doesn't matter. A deal is a deal, he said. I raised the vial and tossed the salt water at his feet. He hissed, skin steaming where it splashed. Took a step back. That was enough time. I held up the silver mirror and spoke the verse. An old tune, one I'd learned decades ago, passed down by another hunter who got too close to a siren and lived to warn others. The siren stumbled. His image flickered. The illusion peeled away. What stood before me wasn't a man anymore. It was thin, long-limbed, with black eyes and fingers like eel bones. It tried to lunge. Too slow. I slammed the mirror into his chest, and he vanished in a crack of sound and scent, like salt and rotting lilies. It was done. I filed the report with the association 2 days later. They marked the siren as neutralized, then flagged the region for increased monitoring. Louisiana has always been a hotspot, but lately, things have really been heating up. Creatures showing up more often, and not always where you'd expect them. They didn't reprimand me this time. Technically, I was assigned. But they did send a follow-up note asking how I managed to banish the siren without a full kit. I didn't reply. Some things don't translate well into files. Kellyanne made a full recovery. Within a week, she was back on stage. I stopped by the club before leaving town and caught her show. Her voice was clear again, strong, smooth, effortless. The kind of voice that made the whole room quiet down just to hear it float. After the set, she found me at the bar. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me, nodded once, then wrapped her arms around me in a hug. A real one, the kind that says more than words ever could. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Thank you, Sam." I tipped my hat, said goodbye, and walked out into the night. Some jobs stick with you. That one did. The next case took me further south than I'd ever been before. Hot country, flat and wide and open. The kind of place where the sun feels closer to the ground than it ought to be. Dry dirt roads, endless fields. People planted corn and wheat here, worked the same land their fathers and grandfathers had worked before them. The simple life is all these folks have. They rise with the sun, eat early, fix what's broken, and rest only when everything's done. There's not a lot of noise or nonsense. No one's chasing fame or fortune. They live quiet, rooted lives. Weddings happen in backyards. Babies are born in the same houses their parents were raised in. You grow up with the land, grow old with it too. These people don't trust easily, and they don't complain. But when something threatens the land, when the soil they depend on turns strange, or starts to take instead of give, that's when even the toughest old farmer might come looking for help. Not from doctors, not from sheriffs, from us. One such man was Darwin. He was older, 50s or 60s maybe. Long frame, skin like cracked wood. He wore a white shirt tucked into faded jeans, a belt with a silver buckle, and leather cowboy boots that had seen more decades than I had. I met him out by his barn late afternoon. He was leaning on the fence, chewing on a toothpick, and watching the horizon like something might crawl out of it if he blinked. "You Carver?" he asked. "That's me," I said. He nodded, like that confirmed something he'd been hoping wasn't true. "I appreciate you coming," he said. I stepped out of the truck and shut the door. "You called the association?" He didn't answer right away, just stared down the field for a long moment. The wind barely moved the tall grass. "I didn't call, I wrote a letter," he said finally. "A letter?" "Yeah, mail still works. Figured if what I heard was true, they'd send someone." "And what exactly did you hear?" I asked. Darwin didn't look at me. He just kept watching the horizon. "My granddad told me once, back when I was a boy, That there were people out there who handle things regular folk can't. Said they kept quiet, traveled light, and showed up when the world turned sideways. I remembered that.
"And you think your world's turning sideways?" I asked. He nodded once.
"Something ain't right with this land."
I waited, but he didn't say more.
"You want to tell me what kind of not right?" I asked. He looked at me then. Really looked. Eyes like dark glass. Not scared, not even nervous. Just tired.
"You'll see," he said.
He turned and started walking toward the fields. I followed. As we walked, I noticed little things. Rows that should have been straight, but weren't. Patches of ground that looked burned, not black, but pale, like the life had been drawn out of them. Corn stalks that twisted in ways they shouldn't.
"You don't use chemicals out here?" I asked.
"Nope, just sun, water, and time," he replied.
"And these marks?" I asked.
"They ain't from me," he answered. We reached the edge of the main field, and Darwin stopped. There was a spot dead center, where nothing grew. Perfect circle, maybe 20 feet across. The dirt inside it was cracked, dry, and gray. "Showed up last week. Wasn't there before. Now it won't go away. Nothing grows in it. Ground's all wrong," he said.
"You tried digging?"
"Shovel snapped clean in two," he said. That got my attention. "You think it's natural?" Darwin gave me a flat look. "Son, if I thought it was natural, I'd be drinking a beer on my porch, not talking to a man who looks like he lives out of his truck."
"Fair point."
"How long's it been like this?" "Well, 8 days. Started with the dirt going pale. Then the livestock got jumpy. Couple of them ran off. Dog won't go near it." I crouched by the edge of the circle, ran my fingers lightly over the soil. It felt dry, too dry, like it hadn't seen moisture in years, not just a week.
"Has anything come out of it?"
"No, not yet."
That last part wasn't comforting.
"All right, I'll take a closer look," I said, standing up. Darwin didn't thank me, just nodded once again. That was his way. How he knew about us, I don't know, but I found that the older someone is, the more secrets they've dug up about this world. Some from books, some from whispers, and some just from paying attention. Darwin had seen something once, or someone had told him something, and he'd filed it away like a tool in a box, saving it for the day he might need it. That day had come, and now I was here. Darwin didn't like the word haunted. He called it plagued, said the land was sick, said it felt watched. I'd heard that before, plenty of times. Most people dance around the word ghost until they've got no other choice. That night, I stayed on the farm. Darwin offered me the spare bedroom, but I sat up on the porch instead. I wanted to hear the land, listen to the way the night moved around it. And it didn't take long. Just after midnight, the crows came. Not regular crows. Not the ones that show up after storms looking for worms. These were something else. They didn't land. They just circled the edges of the field, screaming. Loud, sharp cries that made the wood and the railing tremble. I counted at least 30 of them, maybe more, all circling the dead patch watching and waiting. Crow demons. They're not demons in the Bible sense. You won't find them in any scripture. These things are more like spirits, twisted ones, born of pain, murder, or betrayal. They roost in trees, claw at buildings, and feed on suffering like it's supper. You don't get them unless something terrible happened on the land, something that never got fixed, never got forgiven. By morning, the crows were gone, but their damage was clear. The barn roof was torn in places. Crop rows were shredded. A metal tool had been bent in half and left sticking out of the ground like a warning. Darwin didn't say much when I told him what they were. He just nodded and spit in the dirt. I figured. The birds had been wrong since the frost. I asked if he knew anything about the land's history. Not his time, but before that. He looked away, then back. Well, this farm used to be something else. A plantation. Way back. I found old records once. Ledgers, names, dates. Burned most of it. Didn't feel right keeping it. I nodded. You didn't cause it, but the land remembers. And that was the root of it. Crow demons don't just show up. They're drawn to hurt that's been buried. This place had seen pain, and it had never been made right. So I set to work. I spent the next 3 days on the property. Didn't sleep much. Didn't leave the fields. I walked the perimeter with a compass, marking where the crows perched at night. I dug in certain places, soft patches where the dirt felt warmer than it should. In one spot, near an old oak tree, I found a rusted chain buried under 6 inches of soil. That night, I started the ritual. Cleansing land. It's not like cleansing a house. You can't just light some candles and say a few words. It takes real work. Tools, knowledge, and a whole lot of patience. I built a small fire near the center of the dead circle, added dried sage, some cedar chips, and the pieces I dug up. Bones, metal, bits of broken pottery, artifacts from a time that still echoed too loudly in the soil. Then I began the chant. It was an old tongue, one I'd learned from a healer in Georgia years ago. The kind of words that sound like wind through reeds, that don't fit easily in the mouth. They weren't mine, not really, but they'd been passed to me, and I used them the best I could. The first night, nothing happened. The second night, the crows came closer. They screamed louder. Some even touched down on the edge of the circle, but they didn't cross the line. They couldn't. Not with the fire burning and the chant still going. Darwin watched from the porch, shotgun on his lap. Not that it would have helped. On the third night, everything changed. Just before dawn, the crows dove. A full swarm, black wings blotting the sky. I thought they might overwhelm the circle, but the fire surged. The ground shook. The artifacts burned bright and hot, and the scream the crows made as they were forced back. It didn't sound like birds anymore. It sounded evil. They scattered all at once, rising high and vanishing into the sky like smoke pulled into a chimney. And then there was silence. Real silence. The kind that presses against your ears because you didn't realize how loud everything had been until it stopped. The land exhaled. I stayed up until sunrise. When the light touched the field, the dead circle was gone. In its place, green shoots had already started to rise. Darwin walked out slowly, boots crunching on dry grass. "That's it?" "That's it," I replied. He looked like he didn't believe me. Then he looked at the field, at the green, and something shifted in his face. His jaw loosened. His shoulders dropped. "Thank you," he said. I packed up my things later that afternoon. He offered me a meal, a place to stay, a fresh bottle of something strong. I turned him down. I sent my report to the association the next day. I included the usual details, what I found, what I did, how I handled it, but I added a personal note at the end. I told them the truth. The crow demons weren't like the ones I'd faced years ago. They were more aggressive, smarter. They moved with purpose, like they knew what I was doing before I even stepped on the field. And that wasn't normal. I said what I've been thinking for a while now, that the creatures we deal with are changing. Year by year, decade by decade, they're getting stronger, meaner. The patterns are shifting, and I don't think it's random anymore. The association didn't argue. They didn't offer a theory either. Their only response was short and direct: accelerate recruitment. Start training younger hunters now. Prepare for a larger field presence in the next 10 years. Whether that move will be enough, or even the right one, only time will tell. I'll keep writing in this journal as long as I've got ink and time and hands that can still hold a pen. I'll keep adding stories to these pages. God knows I've got a few more in me. Maybe even another decade if I'm lucky. The world hasn't stopped spinning, and the things in the dark haven't stopped moving. So I won't either. Not yet. But I'm not blind to the truth. I know I'm getting older. The sideburns have gone gray. The knees creak when the weather shifts. After a long run, it takes me a full day to feel right again. That was not the case 20 years ago. I used to bounce back way faster. Now I need ibuprofen and a nap. And yeah, one day retirement's on my mind. I think about it sometimes, late at night when the work is quiet and my gear's been put away. I imagine someplace peaceful, not too far from town. Small building with a front window. Maybe a bell that rings when someone opens the door. I've always liked pizza. Back in college, there was this little joint right off campus. Greasy slices, cheap beer, sticky booths. We spent hours there, talking about classes, life, and things we thought we understood. I think I'd like to open a place like that. Simple, warm, something steady. Maybe I'll call it Carver's. Maybe not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is I'm not done yet. There's still work to be done. Still things out there that need dealing with. And as long as I can do it, I will. I owe that much to the people I've helped. And the ones that couldn't. And you, whoever you are, reading this journal now, remember something important. There's always going to be something in the dark. Always has been. But there's always something standing in its way, too. Maybe it's me. Maybe it'll be you. The point is, someone always picks up the torch. That's the way the world works. You fight until you can't. And then the next one steps up. That's the deal.
Evil doesn't sleep, but neither do we.
You ever wake up to the sound of birds chirping, sun peeking through the tent flap, and your first thought is, dang, that bear was loud last night? Well, that's a normal Tuesday for me. Name's Ryan. I'm a 27-year-old park ranger, and I live about as close to the edge of the wilderness as you can get without needing a permit. Think national park/reserve, mountains all around, dirt roads, pine trees tall enough to hide a cell tower. And the air is so clean it almost tastes sweet. I've got a one-room log cabin. No TV, no internet, just me, my gear, and a view that makes all those tech bros cry on their treadmills. I guess you could say I'm an adventure junkie. Always have been. Camping with bears, done it. Sleeping under a thunderstorm in a hammock. Twice. Ate nothing but beef jerky for breakfast 5 days straight once just because I could. The local store guy thinks I'm nuts, but he still stocks the teriyaki kind I like. I live out here because, honestly, it's where I belong. The quiet, the trees, the rush of wind down a ravine. It all makes sense to me in a way cities never could. Growing up, we didn't have much. My folks were good people, hardworking, kind. The kind who packed you a sandwich, even if they were skipping lunch themselves. But money? Well, that was always tight. Vacations meant a beat-up tent, a bag of dollar store marshmallows, and the same pair of jeans all week. I didn't care. Those were the best days of my life. I remember the crackle of the campfire, Mom grilling whatever Dad pulled out of the lake that morning. Bluegill, usually. Dad said they were ugly fish, but tasty as heck. We'd all sit on upturned logs, roasting marshmallows so cheap they stuck to your fingers worse than gum. The stars above seemed like they were putting on a show just for us. But my favorite part? Caving. My dad had this thing for exploring the old mines scattered around the hills. Some were sealed off, but others, well, let's just say we didn't ask permission. He'd bring a couple flashlights, a cheap plastic helmet for me, and we would spend hours down in those tunnels. It was cool and damp, the air always smelling like wet stone and rust. I felt like Indiana Jones, minus the whip and, the giant boulders. Just a scrawny kid with dirt on his face and his old man showing him the ropes. Those summers, they shaped me. I didn't have, new Converse like the other kids at school. My backpack was duct taped and my lunch was wrapped in tin foil. No fancy boxes. But I had stories. Real ones. And when I grew up, well, I never really let go of that. College was a detour. Got a degree in environmental science because, hey, turns out loving the woods can be useful. Most of my classmates wanted to work for conservation groups or wear ties and argue about wetlands in a boardroom. Me? I just wanted to get back out here. And I did. Now, officially, I'm a park ranger. But I'm not the type who hands out trail maps or stands around sipping coffee by the station porch. I'm what they call a caver. That's right. I take people, mostly kids, into the caves near the park trails. We explore the tunnels. I teach them about bats and rock formations. I spook them with scary stories. And we all run like heck when we actually see a bat. At the end of the day, they all get a shiny badge that says Junior Caver or something like that. Their parents take pictures. The kids feel like explorers. And I get to pretend like I'm 10 years old again. It's a good gig. Honest work. Been doing it 5 summers now, and I know these caves like the back of my hand. Of course, it's not always fun and games. Some summers have been weirder than others. I've seen things down there that I don't talk about often. Strange things. Things that don't fit into my ranger manual or any biology textbook. But I'll get to those. My name is Ryan, and I'm a cave explorer. These are my stories. Now, cave exploring has always been strange. Heck, anything that has to do with the woods or dark, tight places is strange if you think about it. There's just something ancient about being in a cave. When you're down there, away from sunlight, no phone signal, no road noise, surrounded by rock on all sides. It does something to your brain. It's not like a haunted house or a horror movie. This is a different kind of fear. Older, like something deep in you remembers being afraid of places just like that. Some people can't handle it. They panic, start breathing fast, sweating. One kid threw up in his helmet once. It's not even the tight spaces that get him. It's the stillness, the silence. You feel like you've been dropped off the face of the earth. Me, well, I love it. Always have. I guess I'm one of the weird ones. I like the quiet. I like the cold air and the crunch of gravel under my boots. I like how your voice bounces off the walls in funny ways. I even like the smell. Kind of earthy, kind of damp. Reminds me of being a kid, when Dad and I would go crawling through the old mine shafts in the hills. Just me, him, and a cheap flashlight from the gas station. But even I have to admit, there are times when it gets too quiet, when the silence feels heavy, and sometimes when you're real deep inside the mountain, it feels like you're not alone. I've been leading these cave tours for a while now, 5 summers and counting. I've taken groups of kids into all kinds of caverns. Most are shallow, wide, easy to move around in. We keep it safe, we keep it light. Tell ghost stories, talk about stalactites, get them their little explorer badge like I said, and it's good fun. But not every summer is the same. Some summers are off. The first time I saw something I couldn't explain, it was back in 2009. I remember the year because it was hot as hell that season, and the caves were the only place that felt cold. I had a group of 10 kids, maybe 12. A mix of middle schoolers, mostly city kids. They got loud when they got nervous, which was fine by me. Better than crying. We were in this cave I'd explored 100 times. It had a little natural stone bridge about halfway through. Kind of a neat feature. Nothing dramatic, just a bump in the trail. We were almost across it when it gave out. I don't know if it was the heat, or the weight of the group, or maybe time just wore it down. But that section of the rock just snapped, and down we went. Not far, thankfully, maybe 6 or 7 feet. But one of the girls landed wrong. A couple of rocks slid down with us, and one of them pinned her leg. She screamed loud. Everyone else screamed too, which didn't help. My partner Josh was already on the radio before I even got to her. I kept her talking, kept her breathing slow. Asked her about her dog, her favorite TV show, stuff like that. She calmed down fast too. Tough kid. Help showed up fast. The whole team was trained for stuff like this. They had her out in under an hour. Her leg wasn't even broken, just bruised up bad. But while we waited, we were stuck down there, just me and her. The others moved out for safety. And it was then that I felt something. You ever feel like you're being watched? I know, it's a stupid thing to say. Everybody asks that. But that's what it felt like. Not just a feeling. I knew something was watching us. From the dark tunnel ahead, past where the light reached. And then I saw him. 2 small red points of light. Round, unmoving, just hanging there in the dark like a pair of coals. I didn't say anything, not to the girl. She didn't see it, and I made sure she didn't look that way. I told the team to speed up, told them I didn't like it down here. They must have thought I was just spooked from the fall. As soon as the girl was up and out, and they cleared the area, I told them I needed to double check something, and I went back in, alone. Now I know what you're thinking. That was dumb. But I wasn't thinking straight. I thought maybe it was a raccoon or an owl, or worse, some stupid teenager with a flashlight trying to mess with me. We get pranksters like that every now and then. So I went back down in the tunnel, past where the bridge had been, past where we landed. And I kept going. The cave narrowed quick. I had to duck, then crouch, then finally get down on my belly and crawl. Eventually, the tunnel opened up again. There was a wide space, round and low, with a little slope of rubble in the back. In the far corner, hunched over something furry, was a thing. I don't even know what to call it. It was pale, like it hadn't seen the sun in 100 years. Real skinny, but strong looking. The legs bent wrong. Its back was arched, like it'd been crawling for too long. Its head moved in little jerks, kind of like a bird. It was chewing on a dead skunk. I watched it tear off a piece with these sharp little teeth, and I felt something in me scream to get out. But I didn't move. Not until it lifted its head and looked toward me. I didn't wait for anything more. I backed out the way I came, fast. When I got to the bridge, or what was left of it, I took out my knife and cut the ropes I'd used to brace the edge. Let the whole thing fall in. When I got back to the station, I told the team animals had gotten into that section. Said it wasn't safe anymore. Too unstable. Too risky. We marked it off on the map and told future groups to steer clear. I never mentioned what I really saw, and I never went back. You know, my mom used to say something when I was little, back when Dad and I would go crawling through the mines on the weekends. She'd stand by the porch with her arms crossed, shaking her head like she knew something we didn't. She'd say, "You think you're all alone in there? Think again." Back then, I thought you just meant bears. Maybe bats. Now I am not so sure. There are strange things that live in these caves. Now all rangers see things. Maybe not right away, but give it time. Especially us cavers. We spend more hours underground than above it some weeks. And the things we come across, they don't always make sense. Every one of us has a story we keep off the books. Stuff that doesn't make it into the welcome packet or the park website. Some of it's harmless, weird, but harmless. Some of it sticks with you. The next one I've got is about cave water. Simple stuff, really. But I've learned a long time ago, nothing in these caves is ever just what it seems. When I was a trainee, most of my time was spent hauling gear, holding flashlights, and trying not to screw anything up. That's the real start of it. If you want to know how someone becomes a proper caver, it's not glamorous, You don't show up with a headlamp and a vest and suddenly get handed a badge and a whistle. You put in hours, weeks, following the older guys around like a shadow, learning what to touch and what not to. What clay looks like when it's ready to collapse. How to read airflow off a dead end. And then there's the scientific work. That's the part most people outside the field don't think about. People hear caver and picture some crazy guy with ropes and a machete. But real caving, our kind, it's controlled, precise. We map, we log formations, we take samples. Some folks do biology work, others focus on water movement, structural stability, minerals, bat populations, that sort of thing. If you're in the field full time, odds are you've got a degree, maybe two. It's not all glory and dirt. Back then, the head of our training team was this guy named Jackson.
Big guy, loud, always talking like he was on camera.
He wore too much Axe body spray, to the point where it clung to the insides of the damn helmets. I think he thought it made him cool. I was a few years younger, fresh out of school and eager to prove myself, so I kept my mouth shut about it. At the time, I assumed everyone around me was experienced. You know how it is when you're new. You figure anyone with gear and a clipboard must know what they're doing. Only took me a few hours to realize I'd been very wrong. We went out to a cave called Split Jaw. Locals named it that because of the jagged entrance. It's not a tourist site, more of a study location. Remote, unlit, the kind of place where GPS stops working halfway through the hike in. Our objective was simple. Track moisture deposits along a fault line that ran down the center of the second chamber. Seemed easy enough. We got inside fine. Helmets on, pack secured. First mile or so was the usual. Tight passage, small pools, chalk markings from past teams. But then we hit the chute. It was about 40 feet down, angled just steep enough to make you second guess yourself. The whole thing was caked in thick, wet clay, like someone had taken a hose to a water slide. Going down was easy. You just sat and let gravity take care of it. But I remember looking back up once I was at the bottom and thinking, how the hell are we getting out of here? No ropes, no spikes, nothing to grab onto. Should we rig something? I asked. Jackson just grinned.
We'll figure it out when we get there.
That was the first time my gut twisted a little. Later on, we came to the river. It cut straight through the chamber like someone had dropped a saw blade through the rock. The walls on either side were about 8 feet high, smooth, with barely any holes. The water itself wasn't that wide, maybe 10, 12 feet across. But it was moving fast, waist deep and cold as hell. Jackson stood at the edge, peering down into the water like he was trying to guess its mood. You think it's deep? I asked. He smirked.
Only one way to find out.
I gave him a look. It's not really science, I said.
Sure it is. Field testing,
he said, tightening the straps on his pack. You, bringing a rope this time, or? Jackson grinned.
Where's the fun in ropes?
I rolled my eyes. Okay, seriously, man. The current's moving. We screw this up. We're not climbing out of here. He stepped in without answering. Jackson was the first in. I went next. The current hit me like a truck. I nearly lost my footing twice before I got to the other side. Climbing the opposite wall took everything I had. I scraped my forearms raw, trying to pull myself up on wet rock, cursing under my breath the whole time. But what happened next made all that feel like nothing. Jackson was about halfway across when he stopped moving. Just stopped, like he'd hit something under the surface. Then he lurched forward and went under. Not slipped, pulled. Everyone panicked. One guy dropped his pack, another jumped in. Took 3 of us to drag Jackson back up. The water fought us the whole way, like it didn't want to let him go. When we got him up, he was screaming so loud I couldn't think. Just this raw, horrible sound. His leg was torn up, deep red gashes down his calf and thigh, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was his foot. The toes were gone. Gone, like something had bitten straight through the boot and the flesh underneath. Clean. There was no blood in the water when he went under. No warning. No flash of anything moving. Just him. And then pain. We wrapped his leg in a shirt and used spare rope as a tourniquet. It wasn't clean, but it was enough to get him moving. We abandoned the mission, obviously, left some gear behind, carried Jackson out inch by inch. When we got to the chute again, it was exactly as bad as I'd imagined. The clay turned every step into a fight. I clawed my way up with my nails, digging into dirt and slick rock, pulling myself one miserable foot at a time. At the top, I looked down and realized just how stupid we'd been. We filed an incident report when we got back. Standard procedure. I put in everything I saw. The pull, the wounds, the bite. I left out the part where I was afraid to go near water for weeks after. I figured that wasn't helpful. Jackson quit the next week, right after getting out of the hospital. Never came back to the station, never answered my text. I think part of him wanted to pretend it never happened. But I remember. I remember the sound of him screaming, the look on his face when he saw his foot, the strange silence from the rest of the team after we made it topside. Because here's the thing. Piranhas don't live in caves. And no rock in that water was sharp enough to bite a man's toes clean off. I still think about that river. About what could have been under there. We didn't go back. Nobody wanted to. Official word was hazardous conditions. But that's just paperwork. The truth is, something was in that water. Something strong. Something fast. And something quiet. Jackson was lucky in a way. He made it out, and now he works in a fancy boardroom far away from this place. And if you ask around the ranger station, the ones who've been here long enough, you'll notice none of us go back there. I was about half a mile in, working on bat collection, when the call came through. The job that day was simple. Monitor a cluster of roosting bats near an old drip line. I had my sample kit out, one glove on, fiddling with a set of tubes that didn't want to seal right. I was already annoyed, and my radio crackled right when I finally got the thing to sit straight. "Ryan, come in. We've got a situation." It was Linda, a fellow ranger who usually got stuck filing reports by the station. I clicked the receiver. "Go ahead." "Girl's missing. Summer group. Name's Lacey. Yellow shirt," she said. I paused, squinting through the low light. "Yellow shirt?" "Should be obvious. Last visual had her headed your direction, copy," she said. "Copy. I'll start the sweep." I packed up the gear in a rush. Now, finding kids isn't like tracking adults. You don't look for footprints or call out names over and over like in the movies. Kids go where they feel small, where they can hide. You've got to think like one. I start small and move out. Always. It's counterintuitive. Most people think you search the big caverns first. Open areas, louder echo, easier to move through. But I've found that kids don't like big empty places. They like crawl spaces. Spaces they can wedge into, curl up, feel surrounded, comforted. It's how their brains work when they're scared. So I check the tighter offshoots first. Cracks along the wall, dead-end tunnels, anything low and narrow. Called her name once or twice, quiet-like. Didn't want to spook her. Or anything else. After about 20 minutes, I heard the faint trickle of water. That was enough to narrow it down. On this side of the trail, there's a small shaft not far from a slow-drip tunnel. Not mapped anymore. Barely wide enough to squeeze through if you've had a big breakfast. I got on my hands and knees and shined my light into it. There she was. Lacey. Yellow shirt. Curled up with her knees pulled to her chest, maybe 10 or 11 years old. Wide-eyed but calm. Not crying, not shaking. Just quiet. Lacey, hey, you mind coming out here with me? I said, keeping my voice steady. She nodded and held up her arms like she already knew I'd carry her. I held on to her and crawled out backward. It took a few extra breaths to get upright again, but we were out in no time. She held onto my shoulder like a backpack strap the whole way back. Didn't say much. Later, after she'd had some water and the other kids had stopped crowding her, I sat with her by the gear bench. You okay? She nodded. I wasn't scared. Well, you did great. Real smart staying put. Makes it easier for us to find you. She looked at me, then glanced down at her shoes. You weren't the first to find me. I blinked. What do you mean? There was a man before you got here. I sat up straighter. A man? She nodded. He had a big coat and a hard hat and a long beard. He said you'd come to get me. I stared at her for a long second. You're sure? She looked me dead in the eyes. He said his name was Henry. Now, there hasn't been a mining team in these mountains since the 70s. Before the park got its official status, this whole range was a network of old claims and tunnels, most of them long since sealed or collapsed. I helped seal some of them myself. No access, no light, no reason for anyone to be down there. When I got back to the station that night, I went straight to my supervisor's office. His name's Mitch. Old-timer. Been here longer than the paint on the walls. I asked him if he knew anything about a miner named Henry. He didn't even blink. You saw Henry? I paused. No, one of the kids did. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Yeah, that sounds like him. Who is he? I asked. Mitch looked toward the window, like he needed to picture it. Back when they were still digging for gold out here, there was a collapse. About 9 men got buried in the shaft near Saddle Ridge. Only 4 made it out. One of them was Henry. Henry something. Nobody remembers his last name, just that he was the foreman. Real serious guy. Carried a pickaxe everywhere, even above ground. Story goes, he died trying to dig out the others. Refused to leave until he got everyone out. Didn't make it," Mitch explained. I sat there trying to process it. "So you're telling me a ghost helped this kid?" Mitch gave a small shrug. "Oh, he's not the kind that scares folk. He's quiet, stays out of sight unless he's got a reason. But yes, some of the rangers believe in him, especially the older ones. We've had stories like this before." "How many?" I asked. Mitch leaned forward. "Well, every couple years, lost kid, found safe, usually by water. They always say the same thing. Hard hat, big beard, didn't talk much." I didn't know what to say. Years passed after that. Lacey's group came and went. But it wasn't the last time something like that happened. 8 times out of 10, when a kid goes missing on that side of the range, I find them by water. Same exact spot I found her. Sometimes it takes an hour, sometimes a few. But they're always okay. A little shaken, but fine. And they always mention the man in the hard hat. So now, when kids get lost and we're out searching, I tell the rookies not to worry too much if we're in Henry's territory. I tell them to keep calm, stick to the paths, look for the stream. And when I find the kid, I ask them what happened. Most of the time they say, "A man helped me." And I know who they mean. Sometimes I leave coffee and a piece of bread by the old collapsed shaft near Saddle Ridge. Nothing big, just a thanks. I don't know if it matters. I don't expect anything in return, but it feels right. Over the years, I have seen some strange things in these caves. Good things, terrible things. Things that'll make you think twice before cracking a joke about ghosts. Things that make you double-check your flashlight, even when it's fully charged. I've seen a lot in these caves. Some of it helpful, some of it dangerous. Most of it very hard to explain. I've learned that kids don't wander far, but they don't always go where you'd expect. That the smallest spaces are where you look first. The water inside a cave is never just water, and that you always bring rope, even if you think you don't need it. I've learned there are animals that don't show up in any guidebooks, injuries that can't be blamed on rocks, sounds that aren't wind, no matter how much people want them to be. I don't have theories. I'm not that kind of guy. But I pay attention. You work a job like this long enough, and you stop looking for explanations. You just learn how to work around the things that don't make sense. Well, they gave me a promotion last fall. Field lead. Fancy title, slightly bigger paycheck, still the same dirt under my nails. The best part, I upgraded from beef jerky to bacon for breakfast. Honest to God, pan-fried bacon. That alone was worth the years I put in. I still keep a pack of jerky in the glove box, out of habit, but it doesn't hit the same now that I have tasted victory. Things have changed a bit since my trainee days. I don't get sent crawling through mudslides unless I volunteer, which, unfortunately for me, I still do more often than I should. But I've got more say in what I take on now. More freedom in the field. I get to run my own research schedule during the off-season, which means no school groups until the summer rolls back around. Just me, the rocks, and the long list of data points the lab wants me to collect. Don't get me wrong, I miss the kids. Nothing beats the look on their faces the first time they step into a cavern and realize how big and quiet the underground world really is. But these winter months, they've been peaceful, quiet. There's a rhythm to field work. Wake up early, gear up, hike out, take your samples, document, get back before dark, repeat. I don't mind the routine. There's always a project going on. Water quality in the limestone runoffs, bat population tracking, mineral shifts, fungal growth studies. Stuff that sounds boring unless you're the one holding the flashlight and seeing it real up close. Sometimes I send the samples back in padded coolers. Sometimes I haul them out on foot. Either way, it keeps me moving. And that's the kind of life I like. And yeah, I still bring Henry his coffee. Not every week, but often enough. Sometimes I leave it just outside the collapsed shaft with a folded napkin and a square of bread. Sometimes it's a paper cup on a warm rock ledge. Nobody touches it. Not even the animals. But the cup is always empty when I come back. The way I see it, Henry is a part of this place, same as the rest of us. Only difference is, he's got more history in his bones. Now, if you ever think about becoming a ranger, especially a cave explorer, you better know what you're signing up for. You'll spend a lot of time cold, wet, sore, and questioning your life choices. You'll get used to eating granola bars at 3 a.m. and waking up with your face half frozen to your sleeve. You'll learn to walk without making noise, to crawl without panic, to know the difference between a rock shift and something else moving in the dark. You'll also see things most people never do. Light filtering through cords like a lantern, bats swirling overhead in perfect silence, pools so still they look like glass. And yes, sometimes things you can't quite explain. There are strange things that live in these parts. I've said it before and I will say it again. Some things hide in the cracks and the cold and the silence. Stranger still are the people who stick around, the ones who see things and keep coming back, the ones who learn to live alongside the unexplainable and walk the same routes like they're just part of the terrain. Most folks would run or laugh it off or pretend it never happened. We don't. We get up the next day and go back in because that's the job. And if you ask me, it's a job worth doing. There's something about being the person who helps a kid out of a crawl space, who gets a call, drops everything, and ends the day with everyone accounted for, who knows the tunnels well enough to make it back without markers. Yeah, some days are harder than others. Some weeks stretch longer than they should. But when it's all said and done and you walk out of the cave, you get to stand up straight again, peel off your gloves, and look up. And when you do, you get a sky full of real stars. That's the part no one tells you about. Not the weirdness, not the bruises, not even the scary stories. It's the stars. The moment when you come back to the surface, blink a few times, and see the whole damn sky waiting for you. That's what makes it worth it. That and the bacon. But seriously, if you ever do take the job, always bring extra rope. Hey there, I'm Ben. I take care of things out here. Night shift stuff mostly. If you're planning to get into this line of work, I figure it's best you know who's talking to you. I didn't start out in this line of work, though. Back in the day, I was a successful banker at McKinley's. I had this desk that was walnut and longer than most dining room tables. I kept a bottle of 20-year-old scotch in the bottom drawer and only poured it when someone got fired. And I made sure that happened often. I had a view of the river and a girl who brought me coffee before I asked for it. Her name was Jenna. She wasn't my assistant. She was my assistant's assistant. I still don't know who my actual assistant was. There was a stretch, maybe 3 years, where I didn't carry a wallet. Didn't need one. Everything was comped. Restaurants knew me by name. Clubs didn't check my ID. The elevator at my building skipped the lobby if I was on it. I was the kind of man who walked into a boardroom and made the CFO shut up with one look. Now, power, it's not some vague idea. It's real. It's your name in bold at the top of a memo. It's private car rides. It's signing someone else's raise or firing them before lunch because you felt like steak that day. You can smell money when you're in it deep enough. It's in the glue of the leather seats. It's in the ink of your signature. And I soaked it in. They say I slipped up. They say I made the wrong call, insulted the wrong person, touched something I wasn't supposed to. And that's all true. But everyone does that. The difference is I didn't kiss the right ass afterward. I didn't beg. So they kicked me out. Quietly. 1 month I was approving international deals. The next I was getting bounced from my own email account. My badge stopped working. I called building security and they said, "We were told not to let you in." And that was 10 years ago. Now, I walk in boots through wet grass, a flashlight duct taped to a plastic stick in my hand. They call me a night watchman. They pay me in cash every 2 weeks. The job's simple. Walk the fence, check the logs, report anything unusual. This is the edge of nowhere. One road in, one road out. The graveyard stretches wider than you'd think. They bury people cheap out here. No gates. Just iron chains looped between stone posts. The kind of place where nobody visits the dead. It's like they're dumped and forgotten. Which is perfect for what I do. See, I don't care about peace. I care about profit. There's good money in cadavers. Real money. Not that corporate garbage with bonuses and taxes. I'm talking untraceable, unreported, sealed envelope cash. The kind that smells like plastic and rubber bands. Medical schools want fresh tissue. Rich weirdos want bones. People pay thousands for a real skull. You know that? I bet you didn't know that. The first time I dug one up, I was shaking. Not from fear, from excitement, from relief. It wasn't hard. I already had the keys to the storage shed. I borrowed a spade and some bolt cutters, took a look at the burial map, found a name that sounded recent. They put a little plastic tag on the post when it's fresh. Easier than headstones, saves the family money. Well, it took me maybe 3 hours. That dirt peels back like cake if you hit it right after a rain. The coffin was thin. Budget wood. Didn't even need to pry. I just cracked it with a crowbar and reached in. The body was still soft. And that's the best time. Before the rot starts. When the muscles still stretch like jerky and the skin hasn't gone too black. That's when the schools want them. That's when the collectors pay the most. Well, I wrapped it in tarp, drove it out in my trunk, dumped it in a freezer I bought from a retired butcher. You should have seen the look on the guy's face when I asked if it could hold a whole deer. I paid him double, and he didn't ask again. The buyer came a week later. Quiet guy. Thick glasses. Smelled like paper. He peeled off 20 50s and stuffed them in an envelope. Said he'd be back next week if I could get another. Well, that night, I drank scotch from a chipped mug and sat on the floor of my trailer counting out 10 grand in perfect silence. You wouldn't believe it, but it felt better than any promotion I had ever got. Now I've got a system. I only pull bodies on cloudy nights, and I rotate the areas. I mark the headstones with chalk so I don't hit the same row twice. I keep track of name, age, date. You get more for a full adult, especially male, especially recent. Teeth intact is a bonus. I don't drink much anymore. I don't need to. The sound of the shovel slicing down clean into a new patch of earth, that's better than a buzz. The first tap of metal on cheap pine. The way the body shifts when you lift it, and the joints pop like bubble wrap. That's the kind of thing that sticks with you. Lately, I've had this itch to write things down. I don't want to confess. And no, I'm not done. It's like what they say about killers going back to the scene, you know? It's not because they feel bad. It's because, well, they feel proud. It's that cold little thrill that comes from knowing you're better than the people trying to catch you. You don't want to get caught, but deep down, you want someone to know how good you really are. And so that's why I'm telling you this. These are the rules of the trade I have come to know, and now I'm passing them on to you. So listen well, because there are some strange rules to follow. All right, so let's get to it. Rule number 1. Don't crack open sealed crypts. You'll know them when you see them. Stone boxes, usually above ground, or half buried into hillsides. Big brass nameplates. Marble lids with bolts sunk deep. They're sealed for a reason. And it's not just for looks. The inside pressure builds after a while. Gases, fluids, whatever the hell happens in there once the rot starts baking in. One winter, about 6 years ago, I got a little cocky and I decided to try one. We were still figuring things out back then. Me and Danny, my first partner, he was smaller than me, wiry, never shut up. Thought this job was some big horror movie. Kept quoting books and saying creepy stuff to sound smart. I tolerated him because he could work fast. Well, we got a tip that this one crypt at the back of the south lot had a woman in it who died young and rich. Some kind of embalming test case, supposedly, I don't know. They said she was almost perfect still. The kind of thing medical labs would pay double for. We hit it at midnight. Fog in the air, boots crunching under gravel. We brought bolt cutters, chisels, and a car jack, just in case. Took us 40 minutes to get the bolts loose. I kept checking over my shoulder, not for cops, just out of instinct. Danny unhooked the last bolt and wedged the lid up with a jack. The second it gave, we heard a low, wet crack, and then it blew. I was a few feet back, digging through the tool bag. He was right in front. The sound was sharp, like snapping a water balloon with a nail gun. Brown-red fluid shot out across his arms and face. Steam rose off it. I remember the way he screamed. Not loud, more like gritting his teeth through it. We dragged him to the truck, stripped his jacket off, dumped bottled water over his arms, anything we had. His hands were the worst. He kept them wrapped for months, still has to wear gloves in the summer. He doesn't dig anymore. Last I heard, he was working security at a Walmart outside Kingston. So yeah, don't open crypts. Not unless you're wearing full gear and getting paid triple. And even then, ask yourself how fast you can run with acid on your face. Rule 2. Never steal from a grave with coins on the lid. Doesn't matter how fresh the burial is, how nice the body, how good the cash. If there are coins, old pennies, foreign currency, casino chips, doesn't matter. Leave it alone. They're not decorations. Sometimes it's military, war veterans. Certain branches leave coins as a code. A quarter means that the person who left it was there when the guy died. A dime means they served together. Each coin has a meaning, and people who care what those meanings are also care about where the body ends up. Sometimes it's worse. There was a guy I knew named Kyle, worked 2 towns over. We crossed paths a few times, shared a few tips. He was faster than me, stronger too. Thought he was slick. Thought he could outdig me. Last time I saw him, he was bragging about a tall body he pulled just east of here. Said the guy was 6'4", 40-something, fresh from out of state. Said there was a nickel sitting right in the middle of the lid. I asked if he left it. He laughed and said, "What, you superstitious?" And that was the last conversation we had. They found his truck parked crooked on the roadside, driver door open, engine cold. The gear was gone. No body, no tools, just a torn receipt stuck under the wiper from a gas station 2 counties south. I didn't find out what really happened until weeks later. A friend of mine used to run with one of the syndicates out of Syracuse told me straight. Kyle had stolen from a grave he shouldn't have touched. Said it belonged to one of theirs. Not a boss, not anyone special. Just a soldier who died quiet. They put that coin there for a reason. It meant hands off. Kyle didn't listen. 3 nights after the dig, they caught him at the bar he liked up in Roscoe. Didn't make a scene. Just waited for him to walk out the back. They beat him with a pipe and a tire iron. Broke both his legs and most of his ribs. Didn't kill him, not yet. They wrapped him in tarp and dumped him back in the same grave he'd robbed. Slammed the coffin shut, with him still alive inside. Nailed it. Covered it. Smoothed the dirt. Nobody called the cops. No one filed a missing persons report. That's how these guys work. They don't care about you till you piss them off. So don't touch their dead and you're fine. That's the rule. Since then, I've seen maybe a dozen marked graves like that. Coins lined up carefully, balanced so they don't fall. Once, I found a whole ring of quarters stacked like a crown around the headstone. I turned around and didn't come back for a month. Don't try to guess which ones are probably fine. Don't touch the marked ones. There's enough dead to go around. Rule 3. Talk to the guy in the green hoodie. He's not staff, not police. He's not even a person, far as I can tell. But he shows up like he is. I started seeing him during my 3rd year out here. Cold night, no moon. I was doing my rounds near Section D, carrying a lantern since the flashlight was dead. I looked up and saw someone leaning against a tall headstone, one of those statues with angel wings and praying hands. The guy was wearing this deep green hoodie, the kind you find in gas station bins. The hood was pulled way down, real low, and I couldn't see his face. Not even a nose. Just the black under that hood like it went too far back. He had this cigarette between his fingers. I could smell it from 10 feet away. Floral, sour, not right. Like perfume from a funeral home got burned into paper and ash. I asked him if he was lost. He said, "No, I used to work here." That's all he said. Didn't introduce himself, didn't move. Just smoked and stared. I call him Jimmy now. I don't know why. He doesn't seem to mind. First few times I saw him, I thought maybe he was casing the place. Some kind of rival, or maybe a collector who liked to watch. Once, I told him to stop following me. He looked up, still couldn't see a face, and said, "I wasn't." He doesn't show up every night, but if I'm working a site, odds are he'll be nearby, leaning against a headstone, sitting cross-legged on a slab, lurking just outside the glow of the lantern. And he never changes. Same hoodie, same jeans, same awful cigarette. He doesn't age, doesn't blink. He's been the same since the first time I saw him. I stopped asking questions. Now, when I see him, I nod and say, "Evening, Jimmy." Sometimes he nods back, sometimes he doesn't. One time I found him digging alone, quiet little corner of the graveyard near a tree line. There was no shovel, but the dirt was flying out like someone was tossing it from underneath. I stood there and watched for maybe 5 seconds before I turned around and left. Didn't speak, didn't ask. All I know is this: if you see Jimmy, talk to him. Don't ignore him. Don't yell at him, just say hi. Tell him I said hello too. He seems to remember me. And you know what they say, always be polite to the dead. Rule 4. Never dig into a grave with no headstone. Unmarked graves are bad business. I used to think they were gold mines. No visitors, no records, no risk. But that was before I saw what happened to a guy named Morris. Morris was new. Big arms, prison tattoos. Said he used to be a mechanic. Said he wasn't scared of dirt or death. Always talking tough, always grinning, like nothing out here could scare him. He asked if he could tag along on a job, and I said no. 2 weeks later, he called me up in the middle of the night, said he found a grave I must have missed, said it was fresh, still had a ridge in the dirt, but no headstone, no cross, no tag, just a bare patch of land near the east border, down by the older burials. I told him to leave it alone. He laughed and said, "Come on, Ben, you scared?" Next morning, I found his car parked sideways against a cypress tree. Door wide open. Radio still playing some old country song on repeat. There were drag marks in the grass. We followed him. It took 5 men and 2 hours to get the soil cleared. The dirt was packed wrong, like it'd been folded from the inside. And it stank like old milk and burnt hair. We hit bone within minutes. Then we hit Morris. He was curled up under the thing he'd found. His arms were wrapped around his chest, his eyes wide open. He'd been dead for maybe a day, but his face looked older. Skin drawn tight, hands shredded from clawing upward. They said he died of a heart attack. But the weird thing, the body below him wasn't a normal one. It wasn't even whole. Just ribs, a jaw, and something else. Something with fingers longer than mine and no eyes at all. The guys that helped me rebury them didn't ask questions. We dug deep, poured lime, sealed it, planted a proper stone this time, Morris is buried right beside the thing he found. I don't know what it was, but I've seen graves like that since. No marker, no flowers, just hard-packed dirt and nothing else. And I don't go near them. I don't even step over them. I walk around every time, even if it takes an extra hour. Now, I'm not a religious kind of guy. I grew up in the South, went to church because my parents made me. We'd eat corn muffins afterward and pretend the preacher didn't fall asleep halfway through his own sermon. I stopped believing a long time ago. But unmarked graves are unblessed. That's the truth. And they don't stay down. Sometimes it's 60 days. Sometimes it's 6 years. Doesn't matter. When they rise, they're not people anymore. They're not even ghosts. They're things with hunger bigger than mine, and I have got a hell of an appetite. They don't eat like people. They feed. You touch one of their graves, and it wakes them up. They follow you, and they won't stop until you're under the dirt next to them. So don't touch them. Whatever stories you've heard about vampires or ghouls or zombies, those are bedtime stories compared to what comes out of an unblessed grave. There's no profit in it. No price high enough. So stay clear. Rule 5. Never rob a grave guarded by a dog. They look like German shepherds at first glance. Big ones, taller than you'd expect. Clean black fur, no patchy spots, no collar. Just all black like they've been dipped in ink. They don't bark, don't growl. They just stand there, close to the grave, watching. If you see one, don't move fast. Don't talk loud. Don't even look it in the eye. Just turn around and leave that plot alone. I've only seen 3 since I started, and that's 3 too many. There's a story that goes with the first one. I wasn't there when it happened, but I saw what was left afterward. It was a guy named Patrick. Young, a little dumb in the way all youngsters are. New to the job. Thought it was all superstition and stories. Thought I was trying to scare him off good turf. The first time he saw the dog, he thought it was a stray. Said it looked calm, sitting next to a headstone marked Walter C. Hanley. Nothing else. No dates, no flowers, no coin. Just a name and a slab of gray stone. The dog sat real still, tail curled tight around its legs. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe either, from what he said. Patrick tried to scare it off by shouting, and nothing. He threw a stick. That's when it stood up. It didn't bark, didn't make a sound at all. It just stepped forward and closed the space between them like a shadow, quick and smooth. Patrick reached for his shovel. He didn't make it 5 feet. They say the dog bit his face clean off. He was still alive when the first truck got there. Died 6 minutes later on the back of a gurney. I saw the photos. Didn't eat lunch for 2 days. We tried to trap the dog the next night. 2 of us brought a cage, raw beef, sleeping pills, a taser. Never even saw it. Grave was there, same as always, but no dog. The dirt looked smooth, like someone had brushed it. That's when we figured it out. It wasn't a dog. It was the dog. A grave hound. You ever hear about the god of the underworld? The one with the 3-headed mutt at the gates? This is like that. Same blood, maybe. A smaller version. The kind that guards one grave, not the whole afterlife. And once it's set, it stays. Gravehounds don't wander. They don't get lost. They don't chase cars or dig holes or beg for scraps. They don't respond to meat, treats, whistles, none of it. You can throw steak at them and they won't even twitch. They're tied to a grave like chains, and you don't want to find out who they belong to. Sometimes it's witches. Sometimes it's vampires. The real old ones that hide underground and sleep for decades. Sometimes it's just someone rich enough or sick enough to put a blood contract on their bones. Doesn't matter what the reason is. If you see a gravehound, that patch of dirt is off limits forever. I watched one for 20 straight minutes once. Didn't move, didn't blink. Just stared at me from 30 yards out while I walked my route. Sat next to a child's grave with an unlit lantern by the stone, like someone expected visitors. It never growled, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't even try to dig that night. Just packed up and went home early. They say the only way you can recognize one for sure is the eyes. It's not just that they're red. I've seen bloodshot eyes before. I've seen animal eyes glow under lights. This isn't that. These dogs have red everywhere. The pupils, the iris, even the parts that should be white. No veins, no color shifts. Just full-on, deep, slow-burning red, like someone left hot coals behind their sockets. And when they look at you, you feel it, like they've already chosen where to bite. They don't chase you unless you cross a line. That's the only good thing. They won't leap out of the dark and rip your throat out just for looking. But once you dig, that's it. That's your last act. I've seen grown men cry just standing near one. There was a guy, Marty, who thought he could distract one with a squirrel carcass he found in the woods, tossed it 20 feet away and tried to circle behind the grave. Thought he was clever. He lost 2 fingers and a kneecap. Still limps to this day. Doesn't work with bodies anymore. Spends his nights fixing vending machines. You can't trick something that doesn't want anything. That's what gravehounds are. They don't eat. They don't sleep. They don't fetch. They exist for one job, and they do it better than anyone. So if you're out there one night, walking through the rows, and you see a black shape curled beside a headstone with red eyes watching you, don't be brave. Don't be clever. Don't be anything except gone. Never rob a grave guarded by a dog. Rule 6. Never stay in the same place more than 6 months. That's the max. After that, you pack up. Doesn't matter how good the turf is. Doesn't matter how much cash you've got stashed under the floorboard. You move towns, move counties, maybe even states if you're smart. And no, I don't mean to dodge the cops, though that's smart too. This rule isn't about the law. It's about them. The dead. You stay too long, they start to recognize you. Not right away. The first few digs are easy. You're new, you're quick, the bodies are fresh and dumb. But after a while, they start to notice. I don't know how it works exactly. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's something deeper. You ever dug someone up and thought the body looked like it was trying to move? Not twitch, not spasm. I mean trying. Like the fingers were already curling before you touched them. Like the lips were just waiting for your face to get close. That starts around month 4. By month 5, you'll wake up some mornings and find your tools moved. Not stolen, just shifted. like someone dragged the shovel 3 inches to the left while you slept. I once woke up to find the burial map I kept tucked under my mattress covered in dirt smudges. I don't live with anyone, but it was month 6 where I learned what happens if you stay too long. It was 3 years ago, small town west of Athens, Georgia. Flat fields, cheap plots. No one visited the dead except the lawn crew. It was good work. Made more in 5 months than I had in my best year in the city. So I stayed, even though I'd already started to feel it. That prickling weight behind me when I walked between rows. That tug in my hand every time I lifted a body. Like they didn't want to let go. I ignored it. And then right around the start of month 6, I pulled the dig on a Tuesday night. Quiet one. Solo plot. Man in his 70s. Heart failure, I think. The file said he'd been buried with a gold ring and 3 teeth replaced with capped metal. Easy payday. I opened the coffin and reached down with my gloves. His eyes were open. Not crusted open. Not shifted during decay. I mean open wide. Like he'd been waiting for me. I stepped back fast. My hand slipped on the lid, and I nearly dropped the crowbar. When I looked again, the eyes were closed, just like a normal body. I took the ring, grabbed the teeth, and wrapped him like usual. Told myself I was imagining things. I didn't go home that night. Slept in my truck. Didn't sleep much. 2 nights later, I woke up to someone knocking on the trailer door. Not pounding, just slow taps. 3. Wait. Then 2 more. I sat there with my knife and didn't open it. After a while, I peeked through the corner of the window. No one was there. But someone had dragged dirt up the steps. Muddy shoe prints. Bare feet, actually. You could see the arches and toes. They went up the steps and didn't come back down. I left town that same night. Didn't even pack my freezer. You think the dead like being dead? They don't. Let alone being dug up and sold like scrap meat. You're not just robbing them. You're pulling them back into a world they thought they were finally done with. And some of them aren't really even dead. Not in the medical sense. In the cursed sense. You never know who you're digging up. Could be a man who made a deal with a witch. Could be someone buried alive and left to rot. Could be worse. Demon cults. Failed experiments. Those ancient bloodlines that come from places the maps forget. They all end up 6 feet down, same as everyone else. But what they were before they got there, that stays with them. You dig them up after too long, they remember you, and then they follow. Some people say it's a scent thing, like bloodhounds maybe. Maybe we carry a smell the dead recognize once we start violating them. But I think it's more than that. Grave robbing marks you. It stains, like grease that won't wash off no matter how many showers you take. Like mold under your skin. You can't see it, but it's there, and it pulls things toward you. You've broken every rule written by man and God. You've stolen from the earth, from the peace, from what little dignity the dead had left. That kind of thing doesn't go unnoticed. So you leave. You take the cash. You wipe down your gear. You vanish. That's the trick. Move before they start catching up. Before they learn your scent. Before they start digging back. Because they will. Look, I never said I was a good person. I don't think you can be and still do this kind of work. But I know why I do it. The money's real. And the risk is real too. So that's the last rule. Once you start doing this, you'll see more money than you ever held in your hands before. Thick stacks, clean bills, enough to drown a man. But you can never stay in one place for too long. Pros and cons of the job, you know? Among other things. Well, 6 months. That's where I'm at. Tonight's the last night. I've already cleared out the trailer, packed the freezer, and loaded the truck. The road west is calling, but I'm not wasting time. It's a clean break, just the way it's supposed to be. Never leave footprints, never leave a name. Besides, the signs are there. I saw another gravehound 3 days ago, pacing near the edge of the north fence. Same black coat, same glowing red eyes. But this one didn't just sit and stare. It growled when it saw me, low and slow, like it recognized me. Well, I didn't stick around, just turned and walked. I've learned not to argue with warnings like that. So I'm getting out of here before something worse shows up. I always do. If you've made it this far through everything I've told you, I figure you are either curious or crazy. Maybe both. Maybe you're thinking about trying the job yourself. Maybe you've already picked out a shovel. Maybe you're eyeing the local cemetery at night, wondering how soft the ground might be after rain. Well, if you are, then good luck to you. Just stay the hell off my turf, you got that? And good luck to your soul, too. I'm no priest, and never was. Closest I ever got to a sermon was falling asleep in a church pew while my mother sang 3 rows down. I stopped believing in heaven and hell around the same time I started counting dollar bills with bloody gloves. But even I know when a line's been crossed. And grave robbing isn't just crossing it. It's grinding that line into the dirt and walking away richer. Still, I'm not here to tell you what kind of person you are. That is none of my business. I am the last man on earth qualified to judge anyone. You want the money? The rush? The freedom? Fine by me, I won't stop you. Hell, I respect the guts it takes to even think about doing this kind of work. Most people don't have the spine for it. Most people wouldn't even dig a hole for free, let alone rob one for cash. But if you do start, and if you survive long enough, maybe we'll cross paths one day. Could be out in the middle of nowhere, some rest stop just off the highway, sharing a gas station sandwich and a couple warm beers. Maybe we'll trade stories and compare scars and laugh like we both don't sleep with knives under our pillows. But if not, if this is the last time we ever cross lines, just remember the rules. Break one, and something will come for you. Might be slow, might be fast, but it'll come. And that's all I've got to say. I've got a full tank and an empty highway ahead of me. There's another graveyard out there waiting, and I plan on getting to it before the dirt dries too much. And when they finally get me, I won't beg. I'll just go into the dirt nice and easy. Because I earned my place there. And I deserve it. I'm not the kind of guy who asks for much. Give me some peace, a fridge that works, and enough cash to keep the lights on, and I am good. My name's Charlie. I'm 22, just finished my 3rd year of college, and I'm trying to scrape together enough for the last push. Final semester coming up, and I still owe for textbooks and rent. I study environmental science, not because I think I'm going to save the world or anything, but because I like being outside, and I don't want a job that chains me to a desk. I grew up in a town called Eldridge, one of those places with a diner that only plays 80s rock and a hardware store that smells like sawdust and old socks. People there know your name, your dad's name, and which football game you missed. It's boring in a way that is kind of comforting, but it's not the kind of place where you find good work unless your uncle owns something or you're good with cars. I'm not. I get oil on my hands and suddenly I'm wiping them on my jeans and then I've ruined my jeans. That is me. This summer, I didn't want anything complicated. No internship with 15 unpaid hours and a resume full of fake smiles. I just wanted something easy, something I could clock in and out of and not think about when I left. My buddy Trevor said working night shifts somewhere quiet is the best way to keep your brain intact. He worked security once at a boat dealership. Said the first 3 nights were weird. Then it was mostly microwave burritos and watching old kung fu movies on his laptop. So that's what I was looking for. Simple, quiet, cash. I saw the ad in the local paper on a Sunday. It was wedged between a coupon for dog grooming and some woman selling rabbit cages. Night shift. Fuel station attendant. No experience necessary. Start immediately. Good pay. No company name, no logo, nothing but a number printed at the bottom. That's all. I liked that it didn't ask for a resume. I'm not great at writing those. I've worked for a couple restaurants, did landscaping for one weird summer, and sold popcorn at a movie theater where the air conditioner never worked. But anyway, I called the number that same day, maybe 10 minutes after seeing it. A guy picked up on the second ring. His name was Mason. No last name. I started saying, "Hi, calling about the night shift job." And before I could ask anything else, he just said, "You're hired." That was it. I waited, thinking maybe he was joking, but he just gave me directions to the gas station and said, "Your shift starts at midnight tomorrow, don't be late." Then he hung up. Didn't ask for my name. Didn't ask for a single thing, actually. I figured it was some kind of desperate place, probably out in the boonies. Maybe lost their last employee to something like boredom or a better paycheck. Either way, I was in. I needed the money. And I like staying up late. And honestly, it felt like something I could handle. The gas station was at the end of a dirt road miles out of town. Mason had said it was off Road 7, near an old sign for a fishing lodge that apparently burned down in the 90s. I had to Google the spot twice and still didn't see anything on the map. Just a line of road that turned into nothing. But I figured maybe it was one of those places that hadn't been updated online. There's a lot of those around here. I left the house at 11:15 p.m. I had a backpack with me, water bottle, 2 packs of gum, a notebook, and an old magazine I found under my bed. I didn't bother bringing food. I figured a gas station would have snacks. The roads were mostly empty, not unusual for this late. Once I turned off the main road, it got darker fast. Real fast. There were streetlights here and there, but more than one was busted. I remember that clearly. One pole was leaning sideways, like someone had backed into it with a truck and no one had bothered to fix it. The dirt road came up suddenly. No sign. Just a narrow turnoff with 2 bent mailboxes and weeds growing around them. I slowed down and turned in, my tires crunching over the gravel. It was a long drive in, trees on both sides, tall and packed close. I couldn't see anything past them. I kept thinking if I missed the place, there's nowhere to turn around. But eventually, after what felt like, 10 or 15 minutes, the road opened up, and I saw the gas station. It was small, low roof, old siding, one flickering light above the sliding doors. A sign on top of the building said gas in faded red letters. No company name, no logo, just gas. One pump out front. A dusty truck parked on the side, but it looked like it hadn't moved in years. There was not a soul anywhere. I parked my car and sat there for a moment. No movement. No sound, except for bugs chirping in the trees behind me. I got out, walked up to the doors. They were chained shut. Thick, rusted chains wrapped around the handles, locked tight. I checked my phone. No new messages, no signal either. That part bugged me a little. And then I remembered Mason had said keys in the potted plant. And sure enough, there was a big plastic pot next to the door. It had one of those plastic plants in it, dusty and faded. I reached under the rim and felt something cold. A key. Plain. Metal. A little dirty. I used it on the padlock. It clicked open easier than I expected. The doors slid apart with a bit of effort. They stuck a little, but I got them open. And inside, it looked normal. Sunglasses on a spinner rack up front. A whole wall of energy drinks in the back. Gummy bears on the counter. It looked like any other gas station at first, until I noticed the giant list of rules. Behind the register, taped to the counter with yellowing edges, was a single sheet of paper, typed out, not handwritten. The first line stood out in bold. Rule 1. Feed the cat. Underneath that, it read, his name is Ripley, and he's an orange tabby missing an eye. Sometimes you'll find him sitting on the counter as if he were waiting for you to arrive. Other times, he'll be facing the entrance to the back rooms. We don't really know why he goes there, and it's best not to ask. There's a box of yellow sardines from some place called the Watermelon Company under the cash register. Use it to fill his red bowl you'll find near the entrance. Ripley is a good cat. Always keep him fed. Okay. I stared at that for a moment, then looked up. A cat had jumped onto the counter while I'd been reading. Orange fur. One eye. The left one was missing, like it'd been plucked out long ago. His good eye was green, a little squinty, and not too interested in me. He was just sitting there, like the note said, calm and waiting. Hi? I said softly. He blinked back real slow. I leaned over and opened the cabinet under the register. There was a box inside, pale yellow with blue lettering. Watermelon Company, sardines and oil in faded print. The back of the box had something written in another language. I didn't recognize the letters. Wasn't Spanish, wasn't French, wasn't anything I'd ever seen. I opened the box. Inside were little round tins, all the same. I peeled one open, and the smell hit me. Strong, oily, salty. The kind of smell that sticks to your fingers even after washing. Ripley perked up when I opened the tin. I found the red bowl near the front entrance, just like the note said. It had a few old flakes of dried fish in it, but nothing fresh. I dumped the sardines in, oil and all, and set it down gently. Ripley jumped off the counter and trotted over, quiet as a whisper. He sniffed the bowl, then started eating, slow and steady, no rush. I watched him for a second, one eye focused, tail flicking slowly. He looked like a pirate, a small, lazy, hungry pirate. "That's a good cat," I said, and gave him a gentle scratch behind the ears. He leaned into it just a little. After that, I walked back to the register and put a little check mark next to the first rule with a pen somebody left beside the paper. All right, rule number 1, feed the cat. Check. The next line on the paper was bold again. Rule 2, check the locks. Under that, it said, it's all the way in the back past the freezer section in the old chip aisle. Looks like a normal door, except it's red. There's red chains surrounding it. Make sure they haven't budged. Ignore the screaming. Okay, well, that sounded more like security work, which was fine. Maybe the place had break-ins or kids trying to sneak in through the back. I looked around and spotted the aisles. Nothing fancy. One shelf had a half-stocked row of dusty chips. Most of them were off-brand. Things like Salty Crunch and Zesty Corn Explosion. The bags were old and kind of sun-bleached, like they'd been sitting for a long time. The freezers were humming low. Half of them were empty. One had a few popsicles in the corner. Another had what looked like frozen burritos from another decade. I passed them and turned into the far back aisle. The air back here felt still, like this part of the building didn't get cleaned often. And then I saw it. The door wasn't hard to find. It was bright red. Not painted over, but a solid metal red. Like, I don't know, fire truck paint. Heavy, thick, and wrapped in chains. Big red chains, thick as my hand. Not just wrapped around the door handle, but across the whole door in a tight X shape. The links looked solid. Some had little dents in them, like they'd been hid or scraped at one point. The padlock, it was huge. Old-fashioned, like something off a giant barn. There were scratches on the wall near the handle. I figured that part right away. Long, deep ones, like someone had dragged a tool or their nails down the drywall, like they'd tried to get the door open, or maybe tried to stop it from closing. I leaned forward, didn't touch anything yet, just looked. Didn't feel like a backroom door. It felt wrong, too solid, too sealed, like it wasn't meant to lead somewhere, but meant to hold something in, something that should not be allowed out. Still, I was supposed to check the locks, that was the rule. The rule also mentioned one more thing. Ignore the screaming. I didn't want to believe that part when I read it. I figured it was just written that way for effect, something to creep out new hires. But standing here now, with my ears straining in the silence, I heard it. Faint at first. So faint, I thought maybe it was the freezer humming wrong. Then it rose, high and distant, like someone screaming behind several walls. It wasn't angry. Wasn't even clear. Just pain. Repeating. Not words, not names, just human sound over and over, like it was on a loop. I reached out again. My fingers were just inches from the padlock when I heard it. A meow, soft, calm. I turned. Ripley. He was sitting at the far end of the aisle, right where it opened back toward the front of the store. His good eye was focused on me. He meowed again. Not loud, not angry, but sharp, like a warning. I lowered my hand slowly. "All right, you're the boss," I said. I backed away from the door, turning carefully. The screams hadn't stopped. They were still going up and down in volume, as if someone were being dragged across a floor, just out of reach. Ripley didn't move, not at first. He just sat there, tail wrapped neatly around his paws, watching me, waiting. Then he turned and walked off like nothing had happened. I followed him back up the aisle, past the old chip rack and the buzzing freezers. The screams faded behind me, like they didn't want to cross the threshold of that aisle. Back at the counter, I picked up the pen again and marked the paper. Rule 2, check the locks. Check. The third rule was just as simple as the other ones. Rule 3, clean around the gas station. No need to clean outside. It's the inside that counts, or so they say. You'll find weird things lying around from previous customers who like to drop things. Candy wrapper here, paper cup there, a loose tooth maybe, or an old photograph with a head missing. Just throw it all away. Keep the place clean, it read. That one made me laugh a little first time I read it. A loose tooth? Seemed like a joke someone typed out for fun. Still, well, the place could use a little tidying. Wasn't gross, but it had that look of somewhere no one really took care of. Dust around the corners, empty cup under the chip rack, sticky patch by the slushy machine, that sort of thing. I pulled my phone out and started playing music while I cleaned. Mostly old stuff, radio hits, little rock, something to break up the silence. I found a broom behind the counter and a roll of thin plastic garbage bags. Ripley followed me around for a bit, then curled up near the red bowl and dozed off. I started in the candy aisle. There was a half-sucked lollipop stuck in the bottom shelf. I had to scrape it off with a key I found in the drawer. Then there were 2 soda cans behind the sunglasses rack and a single sock on top of the snack display. Not a pair, just one. Weird, but not impossible. Then I saw the photograph. It was lying near the fridge that barely worked, face up on the floor. Black and white, little curled at the edges. Looked like something someone's grandma might keep in a box in the attic. The picture showed a family, 2 adults, a girl, a boy, standing in front of a carnival booth. Balloons in the background, some kind of striped tent behind them. They were all dressed nicely. The boy even had a little tie. But none of them had heads. Not blurred, not faded, just gone, like they were never drawn in. Their necks stopped where their collars started, clean and flat, like cut paper dolls. I turned the photo over, nothing on the back, no writing, no date. I didn't feel right throwing it away, so I slipped it under the counter near the sardine box. Then I kept cleaning, and the weird stuff kept coming, but I got used to it. Bottle caps with teeth marks, candy wrappers folded into tiny origami birds. Once, I found a pair of tiny red shoes in the freezer next to a frozen burrito. They were child-sized and spotless, like someone had placed them there on purpose. Then there were the photos. At first, just 1 or 2, tucked under shelves or dropped behind the drink coolers. But after that first week, I started finding them everywhere. Folded behind snack displays, stuffed behind pages of old magazines, slid between cracks in the counter. They were always black and white, curled at the edges with that worn paper feel, like they'd been handled too many times. Some were clearly from long ago. Town parades, old ribbon cuttings, a Boy Scout troop in front of a flagpole. Others seemed newer, maybe a few decades back at most. Kids posing at a fountain, teens outside a diner, families standing in front of storefronts. Every photo had one thing in common. No one had a head. The bodies were dressed up nice. Everyone stood still, smiling, holding hands or balloons or newspapers, but where their heads should have been, there was nothing. No blurring, no damage, no signs of age. Just clean, flat space above the collars, like someone had taken scissors and trimmed them off with perfect precision. I never found two of the same photo. Never found anyone who looked familiar. Just headless crowds caught in moments they probably thought were ordinary when the picture was taken. I stopped throwing them out after a while. I didn't want them, but I couldn't make myself toss them either. They didn't feel like trash. They felt... I don't know how they felt. Not like trash. So I tucked them in a drawer under the register. The same drawer where I kept the item the faceless man had handed me on the first night. The one I still hadn't dared to look at. But even with the pictures, even with the little red shoes and the candy birds, nothing ever felt immediately dangerous. After a few nights, I got into a rhythm. Show up just before midnight, check the rules, feed Ripley, clean a little, watch the clock. Sometimes I read or looked through the old magazines in the rack. Nobody ever came in. The gas pump outside never beeped. The register never rang. Ripley sat with me most nights. He didn't beg for food after the first feeding. Just kept close. One time, he hopped up onto the register and pressed a paw onto the keypad. I laughed, scratched his head, and told him he was not getting my paycheck. It was easy. It was weird, but it was my routine. Until the fourth night. At 2 a.m., I saw headlights through the glass. It was quiet. I just finished sweeping up the chip aisle. I looked up and saw a red Ford sitting under the one working street lamp out front. It hadn't been there when I looked up 10 minutes ago. I stepped closer to the window. The car was clean, shiny even, like someone had just washed it. The street lamp lit the whole front of it clearly, and inside the car, sitting still as stone, was a man. He didn't move, just sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel. He wore a deep velvet suit, dark purple or maroon. I couldn't tell from where I stood. He had a green cane leaning against his shoulder. It was chipped and crooked. But his face... he didn't have a face. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just skin, smooth and blank, like a wax doll that never got finished. I didn't know what to do. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. But I felt like he was. I ran back to the counter and looked at the paper again, scanned down past the rules I already checked off. And there it was. Rule number 4. Lock the doors when you see a red Ford outside. It read, There's a man with no face that sits in the lot in his red car under the street lamp at exactly 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. He never comes inside, but sometimes he watches from outside the glass windows. He wears a velvet suit with a green cane that has seen better days, but he wears no face. Keep the doors locked until he leaves. My heart dropped. I hadn't locked the doors. I spun around to grab the key, and then I saw him again. Not outside. Inside. He was standing in the snack aisle. I hadn't even heard the door open. Not even a sound. 1 minute, the man in the red Ford was sitting under the street lamp outside, still as a statue. The next, he was standing in the snack aisle, like he'd always been there, like I'd forgotten he was supposed to be outside at all. I had no idea how long he'd been standing there before I noticed. He wasn't moving, not even a twitch. His velvet suit clung to him like it'd been tailored yesterday. It was a deep, dark red, almost the same color as dried berries, and there was not one wrinkle on it. Over one arm, he carried a long green cane, thin and bent at the top, like someone had used it too many times or dropped it too hard. The cane touched the floor beside him, but didn't help him walk, at least not that I could see. But his face, just a smooth blank space, like an artist had started making a person, but got tired halfway through and just left his face unfinished. The skin was pale and slightly stretched, like it'd been pulled too tight over something underneath. And then I remembered the rule. My eyes darted across the typed lines until I found what I was looking for. Rule number 5, in case of emergency. It read, if you happen to not lock the doors in time and the man comes in, keep your head down and don't look at him. Allow him to roam the aisles. You'll know where he is by the tapping of his cane. Answer his questions if he needs help finding something, and accept whatever he gives you when he pays. It's not always cash. You'll know he's left when the cane fades away. I didn't know what to do besides follow the rule. The whole shift so far had gone fine because I followed the rules exactly. I wasn't about to stop now. So I sat down on the stool behind the counter, rested my arms on my knees, and dropped my head until I was staring at the gum under the counter ledge. I didn't lift my gaze. I didn't breathe too loud. I didn't move. And then I heard it. A tapping. It was soft, measured, slow. Not like a cane someone needed to walk. More like a metronome. It echoed lightly off the tile floor, getting louder as he got closer. I kept my eyes down. I didn't want to see where he was. I didn't want to see what his body looked like up close, or what it felt like to have someone with no face just a few feet away. The tapping stopped for a second. I heard the sound of plastic crinkling, then paper rustling. It was faint, but I knew it. Someone checking prices, flipping labels, digging through shelves. He was browsing. Then the cane tapped again. He was getting closer. The taps grew louder until they weren't far away anymore. They were right across from me. I could feel him standing there at the register, waiting. Something about the silence told me he wasn't just browsing anymore. He was ready to interact. Then, without any kind of warning or shift in the air, he spoke. His voice was smooth and careful. It didn't sound like a whisper or a threat. It sounded like someone asking a question out of habit.
"Do you sell lighters here?"
Something about hearing him talk made it worse. I wasn't sure where the sound was coming from. It wasn't muffled. It wasn't echoing. It was just there. A voice floating in front of me, like someone had turned on a recording. Still staring at the floor, I answered. "Yeah, right in front of you. Small rack next to the candy." There was a pause. I heard the sound of something small and metal being picked up. Then nothing. Just silence. I didn't move. He didn't ask anything else. Didn't say thank you. Didn't comment. Then after a few more seconds, I heard a soft sound. A small object placed on the counter. Not heavy. Something about the size of a wallet or a phone, maybe, with a flat surface and a faint scrape as it touched down. I didn't look. I reached up blindly, slid the object off the counter, and tucked it into the drawer under the register. It felt cold, a little too smooth. I didn't take a closer look. The tapping began again. He was leaving. Every step felt like a weight being lifted. The taps grew softer as he walked away from the register, past the drinks, back down the aisles. Then they became faint, and then they vanished. No beep from the door, no sound of a car starting, but I knew he was gone. I looked back at the paper on the counter, and my eyes drifted to the next line. Rule number 6. If you happen to look straight at him, pray. There was nothing else written after that. No instructions, no details. Just that one line. I sat back, my hands gripping the edge of the counter, and tried not to think too hard about what would have happened if I hadn't looked away in time, and what might still happen if I ever looked straight at him. By the end of my first week, I had the routine down cold. Ripley got his sardines before the clock hit 12. The floors were clean enough to eat off of. And the red Ford showed up every single night at exactly 2 a.m., just like the rule said. But now I was ready. I watched the clock like it owed me money. The moment it ticked to 1:59, I locked the doors and I turned the key hard. Every night, the man with no face sat quietly in the lot for an hour under the flickering light. He never moved, never got out, just sat there in the driver's seat. I didn't look too long. I didn't want to get curious about things I shouldn't. By Friday, I was starting to feel like a professional. Nothing had gone wrong, no accidents, no surprises. Ripley and I had our rhythm, and I even started organizing the magazine rack just to kill time. The rules were weird, yeah, but they worked. You follow them, you're fine. That Friday night, about an hour into my shift, the front door slid open. I jumped a little at the sound. No one had come in all week. The place was supposed to be mine alone, except for the occasional red Ford and my one-eyed cat coworker. A man stepped inside. Tall, thin, mid-40s, maybe older. He wore a navy jacket, jeans, and boots scuffed at the toes like he'd had them for years. His hair was dark, but streaked with silver at the sides. He looked around the store like he'd been here 1,000 times. When his eyes landed on me, he gave a nod. "You Charlie?" he said. Yeah, you Mason?" He walked over to the counter and held out a hand. His grip was dry and firm, but not too strong. "Yeah, it's good to finally meet you in person. I usually don't come by unless I need to. Figured I'd check in. First week, it's always the hardest." Mason smirked a little and looked around the place. It's clean, huh? Cats fed, rules followed, not bad." He moved behind the counter like it was his own house and reached for the coffee machine. He poured 2 cups from the burned old pot I'd made earlier. It tasted like it'd been brewed through a dirty sock, but I didn't complain. We sat down on the stools, each with a cup, and for a minute we just sipped in silence. I said after a few sips, "So, is that guy in the red Ford, normal?" Mason glanced at me over his coffee. "Well, define normal." I mean, he's here every night. Doesn't do anything. Just sits. I read the rules, I followed them, but, who is he? Why does he come here?" Mason leaned back, resting one arm on the counter. His eyes narrowed just a little. Not like he was mad, more like he was deciding what to say. "Well, there's a story. Goes back a long time. Before this station. Before most of what you see around here. There used to be a man who owned half the town. Some say more. Real estate, banks, businesses, apartments, churches, even schools. If it was built, chances are he had a hand in it. He didn't build it all out of kindness, though. It was greed. He lived in a mansion up the hill. You can't see it from the road anymore. Trees grew in too thick, but it is still there. Fallen apart now, but solid stone, high ceilings, windows big enough to drive through. Back then, it was a palace." "What happened?" I asked. Mason didn't answer right away. He just looked down at his coffee, like it had something written inside it. "One night, something snapped. Nobody knows why. Some say his wife left. Some say his fortune got drained in a deal gone wrong. Others say he just woke up and lost his mind. Whatever the reason, he locked the doors to that mansion and he killed everyone. Servants, family, everything. After that, he disappeared. Cops searched the whole county. Never found him. But the locals, well, they believe he never left." "You mean the guy in the car?" I asked. He nodded. "Well, they say he's stuck here. Not just in town, but really stuck. Like part of the land now. Part of the places he used to own. Shows up where he used to walk. Where he used to rule. The gas station's one of those spots. He helped build it, long before it was anything more than a dusty plot and a promise." I stared into my coffee a minute before asking, "What's behind the red door?" Mason didn't react right away. He kept sipping, eyes distant, like I hadn't spoken. But I knew he heard me. I continued. "And the screaming, it's not just once. Some nights it goes on for hours. Same tone, same rhythm. And the photos, I keep finding them. People with no heads. Parades, diners, fountains. Always the same, always the heads gone." Mason finally looked at me. His expression wasn't angry, just tired. "Some things aren't meant to make sense, Charlie." I waited, but he didn't say more. He took another drink of his coffee and looked around the store. The lights buzzed faintly. Ripley lay curled on the counter, like none of it mattered. "This place, doesn't follow the same rules as the rest of the world. You try to pin it down, try to fit it into what you already know. It'll break something in you. Or worse, it won't. And you will just keep on asking," Mason said. I looked down at the counter, at the rule sheet with its stained corners. "Some doors aren't meant to open, son. Some questions don't have answers. Or maybe they do, but the answers change depending on who's asking. Either way, it's best not to chase them." I nodded slowly at that. I didn't like it, but I understood. We sat there for a while longer, drinking bad coffee in a quiet store under buzzing lights. Ripley hopped up on the corner and curled next to the cash register, purring soft. And I didn't say it out loud, but for the first time since I got here, I felt like I understood the kind of job I'd taken. So I kept the job. Wasn't hard. Shifts were quiet. The money came in at the end of each night. And the rules, strange as they were, worked. You follow them, you stay safe. That's the deal. It's more honest than most places I've worked. A month passed, then 2. The red Ford showed up every night like clockwork. 2 a.m. sharp, packed under the broken street light that buzzed just enough to cast his car in a half glow. I locked the doors every time. I used to think I'd only do this for the summer, save up some cash, pay off tuition, move on. That was the plan. But something about this place held me longer than I expected. The strange rules stopped bothering me. I kept the station clean. I fed Ripley his sardines. I stopped asking why the doors had to stay locked, or why the chains on the red door never moved. Still, in my downtime, I started digging. I couldn't stop thinking about the man in the red Ford. I started small. Local history blogs, library archives, quiet questions at the diner on my days off. Most people didn't want to talk about it. A few got that look, like they knew what I was asking but didn't want to say the words. Eventually, I found a name, Samson Field. He was a wealthy developer who lived in this area around 80 years ago, built up neighborhoods, funded churches, made himself the centerpiece of every town council meeting. Some records praised him for creating jobs. Others hinted at shady deals, missing people, family matters that were quietly swept away. But one night, after hours of flipping through digitized newspaper clippings at the campus library, I found a photo. It was small, grainy, probably taken at a party or a ribbon-cutting ceremony. The man in the center wore a velvet suit. A thin cane rested at his side. His face was turned slightly toward the camera. The photo had aged poorly, but you could still make out the faint shape of his smile. It was the same suit, same cut, same green cane. No doubt in my mind. I stared at that photo for a long time. I wasn't the type to believe in the paranormal, not before this job. There are rules to this place, not just written ones, but ones beneath the surface. Old stories baked into the dirt. Names no one says out loud anymore. Some of those rules keep things out. Some keep them in. And some Some are just there to remind you that not everything in the world is meant to be understood. As for me, I like the job. I like the quiet. I like the feeling of knowing what to expect, even if what I expect is a man without a face showing up. But most of all, I like Ripley. He's the only one who really feels like a coworker. He meets me at the door every night. He purrs when I pop open the sardines. He curls up on the counter when I sit down for my midnight break. I still think his missing eye makes him look like a pirate. A tired, lazy, one-eyed pirate who's seen more of this world than I ever will. I don't know how long I'll stay here. Maybe just through the next semester, maybe longer. There's always something else to learn. Another rule, another name, another thing hiding just outside the light. I've stopped asking questions. The night shift runs smoother that way.